Okay, this is the road to Richmond. Covers the 7 days battles, but not the whole thing. Just a few battles here. Let's see, we're in the Cold Harbor, and I'm looking for it. Gaines Mill is up here. Let's see if that's part of it. I'm trying to. Let's see, June 26th to 28th. I did 7 days over here. Let's see what the Gaines Mill starts at. I don't remember my dates. Yeah, that just says June. And there's no backing on here. I don't remember which days this is on it. I could look it up. Maybe the exclusive rules tell me something. I think this is fairly late in the campaign, in the 7 days, to tell you the truth, in the sense of being kind of maybe the middle or end period of it, but I can't be certain. Anyway, because the reason for that is because the Union is trying to withdraw from the area. Now, this game covers uses the rules from the old blue and gray system. This came out a couple of years after the 2 quadric games on blue and gray did. Kind of a, hey, this would really fit well on kind of this, I don't know, kind of grand tactical scale. You're covering a lot of terrain here and fairly simple rules, almost an operational feel to the game. The base system is similar to the Napoleon Waterloo game, and I covered a kind of a offset of that, which was the Napoleon's Art of War games. There's a lot of games based on this system. It's a very simple SPI design. A couple little things here, but we'll go through it very quickly. So, the first thing is the units have 1 number on them, their combat strength. They also have a designation, which is just there for historical purposes. I've got everything set up according to it. And a unit size, which again is just historical. We got our different types of unit. The only thing we have to really differentiate here, well, I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm assuming movement rates are different for them. Damned if I know. I didn't notice that, gee, there's no movement points on these guys. Setup's going to be covered right from the exclusive rules. This is kind of a pain in the ass. They're single-sided counters, and I've got a number on the back, which is for an optional rule. It represents the strength of the unit in case it's in this kind of inactive status. Well, not inactive, but ineffective status. Sequence of play, very simple. First player gets movement, then combat. Second player gets movement, then combat. Bang, that's it. What I do want to look up, though, is the movement point allowances, which I don't quickly see here. Huh. They gotta list them somewhere, don't they? Shit. Yeah. And yes, my rules are not in the best of shape. I'm assuming things have at least 6, but Jesus. SPI hadn't quite gotten... Here we go. The movement allowance for all units is 6 movement points. Okay, so cav and infantry don't seem to make much difference in this one. And you're going to be moving through terrain, and you pay the terrain costs off here. This is all very standard for war games, but I figure with such an introductory game, I ought to go through some of it. You can move through your own pieces. You can't move through an enemy's pieces. You can't end your movement overstacked. Stacking in this game means that 2 units are allowed to be together of your own side. there are zones of control. Every unit has a zone of control on the 6 hexes surrounding it. Zones of control in this game are exceedingly rigid, which is to say, you move into them, you stop, and you will never leave them unless instructed to do so by a combat result. One side or the other has to retreat, essentially, or be destroyed in order for the combat situation to end. Combat itself is also a fairly simple design. Basically, every unit must attack every adjacent... No. Every unit that is adjacent to units must attack. Every enemy unit that you are adjacent to must be attacked. And you can only attack units that are adjacent to you, which means in situations, let's throw some pieces on the board. A situation like this, the Confederates would have to attack both these stacks. Situation like this, you have a lot of options. This one could attack these 2 stacks while this one attacks this stack. This one could attack this stack and this one attacks these 2, or this one attacks these 2 and this one attacks this, or whatever. The only requirement is that all the units have to attack and all the units they're adjacent to have to be attacked. But you couldn't do, and this is what I used to think the rules meant, oh, I got these 2 units and they're both adjacent to, and they're adjacent to all these units, so it's one big fight. No. You've got to divide it up according to your whim. Now, are there any restrictions there? You can make attacks at poor odds. And it doesn't look like there's any restriction on that, so you can go as bad as you like. You'll be rolling, though, on the combat results table, which is over here. And you simply roll a d6. Compare the odds, which will be rounded in favor of the defender. And by odds is kind of the wrong term, but you form a ratio between the 2 strengths. So, for example, an attack here, 7 attacking 7, would round down to a 1-to-1 ratio. 7 attacking 2 would round down to a 3-to-1, whereas 2 attacking 7 would round down to a 1-to-4 table. Now the table covers a lot of different odds, 1-to-5 rounding up to 6-to-1. A lot of variability there, and you'll see kind of in the center, the old SPI standard here, a lot of retreats. And it's not until you start getting higher that you get exchanges. Now, how exchanges work is all the defending units will be eliminated, and the attacker has to lose as many attacking units, totaling at least the same strength point. And then eventually you'll get to eliminateds, defender and attacker eliminateds. There are no exchanges on the bad end of the table. You're just going to take attacker eliminateds there. Actual retreats. The owning player has to retreat 1 hex, so he's no longer in an enemy-controlled hex. If he can't do that, he's eliminated. He can retreat into a non-empty hex with a friendly unit. And if that hex is already stacked too heavily, you displace the units that are in there another space as if it's a retreat. You can't force the displaced unit into an enemy-controlled hex. I believe if it's not... if it's not possible to displace the units without them being eliminated, it's the units that were actually in the battle that are eliminated. You don't get any kind of choice on the battle. Artillery in this game, like in the Napoleon at Waterloo series, is allowed to fire over a hex. It can fight like a normal unit, but it can also project its firepower 1 hex or 2 hexes away. It can only do this if it's not in a zone of control. If it's in a zone of control, it must fight normally. And it has line of sight restrictions. In particular, forests, and if there are towns in this game, I don't think there are, would block the line of sight. Your units don't block line of sight, rough terrain doesn't block line of sight, just forests and towns. These can be combined with a normal attack or be made on their own, and the artillery will never suffer any adverse effects from attacking using bombardment. Okay, one other cute thing. Oh, and they must attack adjacent if they can. I think I covered that. One cute new thing in this is this attack effectiveness rule. If the attacker gets an attacker retreats result in combat, his units, this is optional, will be flipped over in addition to being retreated. And some of my units, like I said, have a number on the back of them. Make a liar of me. And that indicates that I've already written that into place. But many of them do not, and I'll write them in as I need to. Basically, what that means is they can no longer attack. They can no longer move into a zone of control. If they end up in a zone of control and it's their turn to attack, they're allowed to retreat by normal retreat rules, as though they had just been attacked and forced to retreat. They defend normally. And they remain kind of ineffective until the end of each night turn. Now, there are night turns here and here. And those have some special rules too, don't they? There's no combat in a night turn. If you're adjacent, you cannot engage in combat. You must stay in place. Artillery cannot bombard. Units may not enter an enemy-controlled space, though, during a night turn. All right, what are the specials for this game? Or the exclusive rules? Because each of these always has its own little... Well, not much. We got the setup and reinforcements. And then a few special rules to cover the victory conditions mainly, but also some circumstances. So, one is these readouts here, and I think they're facing this way. They're Union readouts. Could be mistaken, but that's how I'm playing them. And the defender basically is tripled if he's attacked through them. Just an additional defensive, but only if you're if you're the owner of them in this case. Well, only attacks going from this side into this side. So in general, the Union would be defending them, but he could give them up and conceivably be attacking from this direction or something. This command control zone, we'll go into that a little later. That's a restriction that the Union can't enter early. All right, the rivers in this game, well, they call them creeks, actually. They're these kind of darker outlined areas, whereas most of the things are just considered streams and have less of effect. They count. The creeks are impassable. You can't attack across them, but the streams are counted as fords, cost an extra movement point. Defender would be doubled if all the attackers are attacking through it. However, there's an optional rule to change that, and we'll be playing with that. The command control zone. No, there's not real command control. Oh, exiting the map. Let's go to that. Okay, there's two hexes you can exit the map from. 0117 over here and 1528 here. And both sides can exit the map, but not through a retreat. And they're removed from play, never return to the game. They count toward the owning player's victory point total according to the victory point schedule. And we'll get to that in a moment. They're not considered eliminated for victory point purposes. Okay. Now to this command control area. It's this little zone right in here, indicated by that line. Union cannot enter that until 3 turns after the Union player has exited the Union train from 1528, or until 3 turns after the Union 14th turn. That should be this set down here. Reinforcements have entered the game. Now the train doesn't come in until turn 11. Otherwise, zones of control and attacks can still be made into that. Okay. Alright, early arrival of the reinforcements. If a Confederate unit exists during its movement or combat phase on a hex on the south side of the Chickahominy. It should be this sucker here. Between from 0407 south. 0407 south over here. We don't know where the Confederates are entering. Looks like, what, 1301 or 1901? They're going to be entering from up there, which is the west. But also, they come in from here, which is clearly on that south side, but it's late in the game. And a number of other places along the line, along that side, over in the southwest. All right. So if a Confederate exists at some point of the movement or combat on a hex south of that, or if a Confederate unit comes within 6 hexes of 2426 or 1826, that's these two bridges. No, sorry. 1826. Where's 2426? 2426 is right here. So getting your way into, that's really the Union escape route or reinforcement location. So if the Confederates manage to do that, then the turn 13 reinforcements will arrive 3 turns. Is that right? No, the turn after that happens. That action is going to be called an activation. Turn 14 comes a couple of turns after. Turn 15, 3 turns after. And then turn 18 comes 6 turns after. So they maintain the same order. And there's both Union and Confederate reinforcements in there. So it's not absolutely clear that this is a good or a bad thing for either side. Both sides get more troops, but here's the thing. The Confederates start off with a pile of troops at the beginning of the game. So my guess is largely this is going to give a lot more troops to the Union and then release some pinning Confederate forces, which come in on the 15 and 18 reinforcements at the trailing end there. So if you're doing well, it's worth doing, I guess. There's a Union train over there on the 11 turn reinforcements. I've already shown it briefly. This is going to be the supply dumps, reserve, blah, 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 cattle, hookers, everything like that. The train's not able to attack. It can't stack with anything. It has 1 defensive movement point, no zones of control, and it's worth victory points. Speaking of victory points, let's go to those. Each player gets 1 victory point for every enemy combat point that's eliminated in the game. The Confederates get 10 extra for taking the Union train out. Or the Union trade counter if you want the non-erratized version. At the end of the game, you also get points for exiting the map. Each Union unit exiting from 1528 is worth a victory point. Not each strength point, each unit. Each Union combat strength point going out through 0117 up here, chasing the Confederates, is worth a victory point per strength point. As long as the Union trains exited the map from here and a Union line of communication exists between the 2 hexes. Line of communication not being something I've mentioned yet. Not being clear in the rules from what I've seen, but it's oh, there it is. A continuous row of hexes from 0117 to 1528, inclusive completely, along roads or trails that are connected at junctions or roads or trails. Free of enemy units, but it can go through zones of control. So it's got to be roads and trails. All right. Let's see what else we have here. We have more about line of communication. If the Union train was not brought onto the map board, any Union unit, excluding reinforcements that never were brought onto the map board, which cannot trace a path of 10 hexes to a road or trail, which in turn exits the map at 1528 or 2426 by the end of the game, will be considered destroyed for purposes of victory conditions. That's only if the Union train was not brought onto the map board. Okay. I'm assuming reinforcements can be delayed because there's an optional rule about that. Yeah, they'll be delayed by an enemy unit occupying their entry hex. Alright, what else do we have here? So we were at the victory points for the line of communication. Strength points exiting here need a line of communication. 5 victory points for the Union if he exits the Union train from 1528. Down here. That's the change of base going on there. The Confederates get 2 victory points for each combat strength point they exit through here if the train has exited the map from there and a Confederate line of communication can be traced back here. 2 points per strength point. And 1 point for each strength point exiting from 1528 if the Union train was eliminated or never entered the map. 20 victory points if the Union train didn't enter the map board. Alright. Additional rules here. These are optional tournament rules, whatever the highest level of play that this game has. One of them is the streams as opposed to the creeks. Creeks sound smaller than streams to me. I don't know about you. The defender is not doubled when he's attacked across them, even if a bridge is present. Units may not advance after combat across a stream, but they may advance across a bridge that crosses a stream, like here. There's a Union siege artillery unit. I don't know quite where it is, but it's a big... Most of these are 1-strength artillery. It's a big 8-strength artillery unit. And that has basically firepower of 8 strength points, but it counts as a 1-point artillery otherwise. Except it has a range of 5 hexes. And it can only move on roads and trails. It'll be eliminated if it has to leave them. It counts as 8 strength points for victory considerations. There's also a set of rules that allow the Confederates to withhold some of their first turn units, and they could bring them in as later units. Now they write down on a sheet of paper whether or not they want to delay them and bring them in with one of those later unit groups, or they can just withhold them as normal reinforcements where the Confederates would normally come on. I can't do that solitaire. And then there's one final additional victory points at the end of each game turn after game turn 8. Physically occupying hexes 1823, this is the 2 bridges, and or 1826 are each worth a victory point for each turn. The Union player gets 5 if the Confederate triggers early arrival of the reinforcements. So that's some extra points that the Confederates can get, which honestly feels to me, well, that the Union can get probably, feels to me like that might unbalance the game if the other game was balanced, but they say no. It might be meant to be a differentiation because of the Confederate variable entry. Anyway, let's go on with this. I wasn't really in the mood to do another Flying Colors, but I needed something that I could handle fairly easily because my work week's starting and I can't do anything. I couldn't learn a new game and start playing it. But this is one from my original set. The first 7 games or whatever that I bought. I don't remember how much I paid. I don't know. It must have been like $1 each, I think. But I'm not positive of that. I know later he was selling them at like $1 each, but I kind of had the feeling I paid like $2 for the pile, which may have been kind of a, oh, let's get this new kid into gaming. He saw me at a tailgate sale, and I was looking over the games, and I picked out a bunch of them, and some of them were real kind of stinkers, things like Armada and stuff. So I can kind of understand that. Well, stinkers by most people's view. I thought it was a cool game. This one is what I'd call the stinker. This and a couple of others, but this one did not thrill me too much. I've never liked it much, but I had some fun playing it with my wife, and early on in our time gaming together, and I figured, well, it kind of fits what I'm able to do tonight and tomorrow.